In this video, I'm going to show you how to take an oversized shirt and turn it into a sleeveless ruffle collar top using this as my inspiration. So let's get started. The shirt I'm using is actually a woman's shirt dress, but these directions will work for an oversized men's shirt as well. Cut off the collar, the sleeves, and the cuffs of the shirt. Then, from the hem, cut 2 strips, 1.5 inches wide, which will be used for the seam bindings. Trim off the button plackets and the side seams as well. From the sleeves, cut a few strips 4.5 inches wide for the ruffle. The final ruffle should be 40 to 50 inches long, depending on how full you want the ruffle to be, so you'll need at least 2 sections 21 inches long. My shirt had big cuffs and short sleeves, so I had to cut out 3 sections. Cut out the body using a shirt pattern if you have one. If you don't have a pattern, you can use a t-shirt, just make sure it's not too tight, as woven fabrics don't stretch. If your shirt has pleats on the back like mine, pin them down first. If using a t-shirt, turn it inside out and tuck the sleeves inside the body. Fold the men's shirt in half, line up the shoulder seams, and use the t-shirt as a pattern for the armholes and side seams. Remember to add extra for seam allowance. I'm adding 1/2 inch for the armholes and 5/8 of an inch for the sides to allow for French seams, but you can add whatever works for you. In general, it's a good idea to give yourself extra room because you can always reduce if it's too big. Next, we're going to cut the V for the neck. I'm going to start at about 1/2 inch above the second button and cut up to the neckline curve, and then repeat on the other side. At this point, you may want to try on the shirt to check for fit. The armholes on mine were a little tight, so I made them a bit bigger. To join the seam bindings for the collar, simply sew the ends together 1/4 inch from the edge, repeat with the 2 seam bindings for the armholes, and finger press open. The final seam binding for the collar should be at least 29 inches long, and the armhole bindings at least 21 inches, depending on your measurements, but I made mine a few inches longer just in case I needed to make adjustments. Next, we're going to sew the sections for the collar ruffle together to create one long strip. Since this seam will be visible on both sides, I like to use a flat felled seam, but a French seam would work too. To sew a flat felled seam, place the pieces with the right sides of the fabric facing each other, and sew with a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Trim one side down to 1/8 of an inch or so. Fold the longer seam allowance over the raw edge, iron, then fold again and iron again. Top stitch close to the folded edge, and now you have a seam which lays flat and looks neat on both sides. The final size of the ruffle collar should be 4.5 inches wide and 40 to 50 inches long, depending on how full you want the ruffle to be and the size of the neckline. Mine was 47 inches. Next, we're going to sew a tiny hem along the length and sides of each ruffle. Start by folding and ironing the fabric 1/8 of an inch from the long edge. Fold again, iron again, and pin into place. Then repeat with the sides of the ruffle. Sew the folded hem down as close to the edge as possible. I sewed the length and the sides in one pass, but the corners were tricky, and in retrospect I think I'd sew the long hem first and then the sides separately. To sew the gathering stitches for the ruffles, make sure your stitch length is at the longest setting. You can use thread, which is a contrasting color, to make it easier to see, but it isn't necessary. Sew along the length of the collar, turn the fabric 90 degrees, make 2 stitches, turn another 90 degrees, and sew a second row of stitches parallel to the first. It isn't absolutely necessary to sew a second row, but it does give a little bit more control over the gathers. Sew the side seams using whatever method you prefer, but I like to use French seams. For a French seam, sew 1/4 inch from the edge with the wrong sides of the fabric facing each other. Trim the seam allowance 1/8 of an inch from the seam, then turn the shirt inside out and iron. Sew a second seam 3/8 of an inch from the fold. Turn the shirt inside out and pin the side seams to the back so they stay in place. To attach the binding to the armhole, fold and finger press the short edge of the binding up, then pin the binding to the armhole with the right side of the binding facing the wrong side of the shirt. Then cut the binding to size, leaving an inch overlap. Sew the binding to the armhole a 1/4 inch from the edge. Trim the seam allowance and repeat on the other side. Fold the armhole binding up a 1/4 inch, iron, then fold it over the seam and pin into place. Sew the binding into place by top stitching close to the fold on the right side of the fabric. Repeat with the other armhole. Just as a side note, I generally try to match the look of the original shirt, and this one was sewn with white thread, so I did the same thing. Find the center of the ruffle and pin it to the center of the shirt with the wrong side of the ruffle facing the right side of the shirt. Pull the 2 bottom gathering threads and distribute the gathers evenly until the length of the ruffle matches the size of the neckline from one placket to the other. Pin into place. Press the gathers, then sew the ruffles onto the shirt with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Remove the gathering threads and trim the seam allowance. To attach the neck binding, sew the binding to the shirt with the right side of the binding facing the inside of the shirt, making sure you have at least 1/2 inch overlap at the beginning and end. Iron a fold a 1/4 inch from the edge of the binding, then sew the end of the binding by turning it inside out and stitching along the edge of the placket. Trim the excess fabric, turn inside out, and repeat on the other side. Turn the binding right side out, iron, pin into place, then top stitch close to the fold on the right side of the shirt all the way around the collar. The last step is to make the hem. Because of the way my original shirt was constructed, my top is a little short, but the process is the same for a men's shirt. Fold the fabric a 1/4 inch from the bottom of the shirt and iron all the way around, then fold it over again and iron again. Sew close to the folded edge all around the shirt, and that's it. We're done. And here's the result. My favorite thing to wear in the summer are breezy cotton tops, but cotton tops can get expensive, so remaking a thrifted shirt or hand-me-down is a great way to save money, stay cool, look stylish, and be gentler to the environment. So I hope this inspires you to try your own refashioning project. Thanks for watching, and happy upcycling!